The red dress clung to my body like a second skin, and I hated every inch of it. I stood in front of the full-length mirror in my tiny apartment, tugging at the hem that stopped mid-thigh, wondering what alternate universe version of myself had agreed to this. The fabric was crimson silk, cut to emphasize curves I usually hid beneath oversized sweaters and loose jeans. The neckline dipped just low enough to suggest without revealing, and the back was almost entirely open, held together by delicate straps that crisscrossed my shoulder blades. "You look like a goddess," Maya had declared when she'd pulled it off the rack at that boutique 3 weeks ago. "Ethan is going to lose his mind when he sees you." That was the point, wasn't it? To make Ethan regret every decision that had led him away from me and into the arms of Caroline Ashworth, the heiress daughter of some real estate mogul. 3 months. It had taken him 3 months after our breakup to propose to someone else, and now I was expected to smile politely at their wedding, like my heart hadn't been shredded. I smoothed my hands down the dress one more time, my palms damp with anxiety. My blonde hair fell in loose waves past my shoulders, styled by Maya, who had insisted on playing fairy godmother for the evening. Makeup that was bolder than anything I'd ever worn myself made my hazel eyes look larger, more dramatic. Red lipstick matched the dress perfectly. I didn't look like myself. That was probably the point. The invitation sat on my dresser. Elegant cream cardstock with gold lettering. "Ethan Clark and Caroline Ashworth request the pleasure of your company." I'd almost thrown it away when it arrived. Almost. But Maya had snatched it from my hands and declared this was my chance for closure, to show up looking absolutely stunning and remind Ethan what he'd lost. "You're too nice, Viv," she'd said, shaking her head. "Everyone walks all over you because you never stand up for yourself. Just this once, be selfish, be a little bit vindictive, show up and make him suffer." So here I was, 23 years old, wearing a dress that cost half my monthly rent from the coffee shop where I worked, about to attend my ex-boyfriend's wedding to prove. What exactly? That I could be petty? That I could pretend I didn't spend the first month after our breakup crying into pints of ice cream? The venue was one of those historic estates on the outskirts of the city, all manicured gardens and marble fountains, the kind of place that required actual invitations rather than Facebook event pages. I arrived fashionably late, as Maya had instructed, my heels clicking against the stone walkway as I made my way toward the sound of string music and polite conversation. The ceremony had already concluded. Guests mingled in the gardens during the cocktail hour, champagne flutes in hand, their laughter carrying on the early evening breeze. I accepted a glass from a passing waiter more for something to hold than any desire to drink, my stomach too knotted with nerves to consider alcohol. I spotted Ethan almost immediately. He stood near the fountain, Caroline's hand tucked into the crook of his elbow, both of them surrounded by well-wishers. She wore white, of course, an elegant gown that probably cost more than my car. Her dark hair was swept up in an intricate style, a delicate tiara catching the light. She looked perfect. They looked perfect together. My chest tightened, but I forced my expression to remain neutral, pleasant. Sweet Vivian, always smiling, always kind. That's what everyone expected. I hadn't made it 3 steps before someone called my name. "Vivian, oh my God, you came." It was Jessica, one of Ethan's cousins, pulling me into an enthusiastic hug that smelled of expensive perfume and wine. "You look absolutely gorgeous. That dress is insane." "Thank you," I managed, my cheeks warming. "You look beautiful too." Jessica was already half drunk, her words slightly slurred as she linked her arm through mine. "Come on, there are so many people who want to say hi. We've all missed you." She dragged me through the crowd, introducing me to relatives and friends I vaguely remembered from my 2 years with Ethan. Everyone was polite, complimentary about the dress, carefully avoiding any mention of the awkwardness of my presence at my ex's wedding. I smiled until my face hurt, laughed at jokes that weren't funny, and pretended my heart wasn't slowly fragmenting in my chest. Ethan hadn't looked at me once. An hour passed in a blur of forced pleasantries and champagne I didn't drink. The sun began to set, casting everything in shades of gold and amber. Guests started moving toward the reception hall, a stunning glass structure that overlooked the gardens. I should leave, I thought. I'd made my appearance, proved I could be mature about this. There was no point in torturing myself further. But before I could make my escape, I felt it, that prickling awareness of being watched. I turned slowly, scanning the crowd, and that's when I saw him. He stood apart from the other guests, positioned near the garden's edge where shadows from the surrounding trees created pockets of darkness the setting sun couldn't quite reach. Even from a distance, he was arresting. Tall, easily over 6 feet, with dark hair styled in that effortlessly perfect way that suggested both money and careful attention. His suit was charcoal gray, perfectly tailored to emphasize broad shoulders and a lean, powerful build. Everything about him screamed wealth and danger in equal measure. But it was his eyes that held me frozen. Even across the distance, I could feel the intensity of his gaze, dark and assessing, studying me with an interest that made my skin prickle with awareness. I didn't recognize him. I would have remembered someone like that. "That's Damien Moretti," Jessica slurred in my ear, appearing suddenly at my side again. "Total mystery man. Showed up with the Ashworths, but nobody seems to know exactly who invited him. Rumor is he's some kind of international businessman." She giggled. "More like international orgasm, am I right? Look at him." I tore my gaze away, embarrassed to have been caught staring. I should probably go. "What? No, the reception's just starting. Plus, I think Mystery Man over there has been watching you all night." My pulse jumped despite my better judgment. "He has not." "Has too. Every time I've looked over, his eyes are on you. Maybe you'll get a rebound tonight after all." "Jessica, I'm not—" But she was already being pulled away by another cousin, leaving me alone near the entrance to the reception hall. I glanced back toward where the stranger, Damien, had been standing, but he'd disappeared. Relief and disappointment warred in my chest. I was being ridiculous. Men like that didn't notice girls like me, certainly not when I was playing dress-up in borrowed confidence. The reception hall was even more spectacular inside, all crystal chandeliers and floor-to-ceiling windows. Round tables were draped in white linen, centerpieces of roses and orchids perfuming the air. A live band played soft jazz as guests found their seats. I located my name card at a table toward the back, tucked between 2 elderly relatives of Ethan's, who were already deep in conversation and barely acknowledged my arrival. Perfect. I could sit here in relative anonymity, make it through dinner and the speeches, and then slip away before the dancing started. The meal was served in courses, each plate a work of art I barely tasted. Ethan and Caroline sat at the head table, laughing with their wedding party, looking radiantly happy. I stabbed at my salmon and tried not to watch them, tried not to calculate all the small moments that should have been ours. "You're the ex-girlfriend." The voice came from directly behind me, low and accented with something European I couldn't quite place. Italian, maybe. I turned in my seat to find Damien Moretti standing there, 2 champagne flutes in his hands, his expression unreadable. Up close, he was even more devastating. Sharp cheekbones and a strong jaw, a mouth that suggested both cruelty and sensuality. His eyes were dark brown, almost black, and they studied me with an intensity that made me want to simultaneously run and stay frozen in place. What? My voice came out smaller than I intended. "The ex-girlfriend," he repeated, offering me one of the champagne flutes. "Of the groom. That's why you're sitting back here alone, drinking water and pretending the salmon isn't slowly congealing on your plate." I blinked at him, my practiced politeness momentarily short-circuiting. That's incredibly presumptuous. But accurate. He pulled out the empty chair beside me and sat without invitation. Who you are. The words came out more sharply than I intended, surprising both of us. His eyebrow lifted slightly, amusement flickering across his features. Do you? Jessica said. I stopped, realizing how stupid this sounded. You're some kind of businessman. Some kind, he agreed, his tone suggesting layers I wasn't meant to understand. And you are? Leaving soon. That's an unusual name. Despite everything, I felt my lips twitch. Vivian. The way he said it, drawing out the syllables, made my name sound like something foreign and exotic instead of the old-fashioned choice my mother had burdened me with. It suits you better than the dress. My defenses snapped back into place. What's wrong with my dress? Nothing is wrong with it. His gaze traveled over me slowly, deliberately, in a way that should have felt objectifying, but instead made heat pool low in my stomach. It's a beautiful dress, but it's not you, is it? This whole thing. He gestured vaguely to encompass the venue, the wedding, my appearance. It's a costume. You're playing a part. The accuracy of his observation stole my breath. You don't know anything about me. I know you've smiled at least 40 times in the past 2 hours, and not once has it reached your eyes. I know you're sitting as far from the happy couple as possible, while still technically being present. I know you keep checking your phone under the table, probably looking for an excuse to leave. He leaned closer, his voice dropping. And I know that red dress was meant to make him jealous, but he hasn't looked at you once. The words hit like a physical blow, all the more painful for their truth. Shame and anger rose in my throat in equal measure. Why are you even talking to me? I demanded, my voice low but fierce. If you're here for the Ashworths, shouldn't you be up there networking, or whatever it is mysterious businessmen do at weddings? Something flickered in his expression. Surprise, maybe, or respect. I've concluded my business for the evening. Now I'm simply curious. About what? About why a woman who looks like you, wearing a dress like that, is hiding in the back of the room instead of making the bastard who broke her heart regret every decision he's ever made. I stood abruptly, my chair scraping against the floor loudly enough to draw looks from nearby tables. My heart hammered against my ribs, emotions I usually kept carefully locked away threatening to spill over. You don't know what you're talking about. Don't I? He rose with fluid grace, stepping into my space in a way that should have felt threatening, but instead felt magnetic. Tell me I'm wrong, Vivian. Tell me you didn't come here hoping he'd see you and realize his mistake. I came here because I was invited, I said through gritted teeth, aware we were starting to attract attention. And because I'm a mature adult who can handle social situations without falling apart. Bullshit. The word was soft but absolute. You came here to hurt, and you're discovering that some pains are impossible to inflict from a distance. Tears burned behind my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Not here. Not in front of everyone. Not in front of this infuriating stranger who seemed to see straight through every defense I'd carefully constructed. I need some air, I managed, my voice thick. I turned and walked quickly toward the exit, not caring if it looked like I was fleeing, because that's exactly what I was doing. The gardens were quieter now, most guests having moved inside for dinner. I found a secluded bench behind a hedge maze, far enough from the reception hall that the music became a distant murmur. I sank onto the stone seat, finally allowing myself to feel everything I'd been suppressing. The humiliation of showing up here at all, the crushing disappointment of Ethan's complete indifference, the mortifying accuracy of Damien's observations. You're crying. I jumped, my head snapping up to find him standing a few feet away, hands in his pockets, expression unreadable in the deepening twilight. I'm not. I started to protest, but he was already moving, pulling a pristine handkerchief from his jacket and offering it to me. "You're allowed to cry at your ex's wedding," he said quietly. "That's probably the most honest thing anyone here will do all night." I took the handkerchief, dabbing at my eyes carefully so I wouldn't completely destroy Maya's makeup job. "Why did you follow me?" "Because I'm not finished being curious about you." "Well, congratulations. You got to see me fall apart. Mystery solved." "No." He sat beside me on the bench, close enough that I could smell his cologne. Something woody and expensive that probably cost more than my entire outfit. "The mystery is why you're crying over a man who clearly wasn't worth your time. You don't know him. You don't know us. I know he let you go. That tells me everything I need to know about his judgment." I looked up at him, surprised by the vehemence in his tone. In the fading light, his features were all sharp angles and shadows, dangerous and beautiful. "Why do you care?" "I told you, curiosity. That's not an answer." His mouth curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "No, it's not." We sat in silence for a moment, the sounds of the reception distant and dreamlike. I should stand up, thank him for his unwanted but oddly comforting presence, and call a car to take me home. This whole evening had been a mistake from the moment I'd said yes to the dress. But before I could move, Damien shifted closer, his hand reaching up to tilt my chin toward him. His touch was warm, his fingers calloused in a way that seemed at odds with his obviously expensive lifestyle. "What are you?" I started to ask, but the words died in my throat as he leaned in. The kiss was sudden, unexpected, and completely overwhelming. His mouth was firm against mine, commanding, tasting of champagne and something darker. For a heartbeat, I froze, shocked into immobility. Then something inside me snapped. I shoved him hard, breaking the kiss, scrambling to my feet as fury ignited in my chest. "What the hell is wrong with you?" I demanded, my voice shaking with rage rather than tears now. "You can't just... Who do you think you are?" Damien remained seated, looking up at me with an expression that might have been amusement if it weren't for the intensity burning in his dark eyes. "Someone who wanted to kiss you." "I don't care what you wanted. You don't just grab people and kiss them without permission. That's assault." "You're right." He stood slowly, and despite my anger, I was acutely aware of how much taller he was, how easily he could overpower me if he wanted. But he kept his distance, his hands visible at his sides. "I apologize. That was inappropriate." "Inappropriate?" I let out a slightly hysterical laugh. "That's putting it mildly." "Would it help if I said you're the first person I've ever felt compelled to kiss without asking first?" "No, that doesn't help at all. That makes it worse." "Why?" Because, I sputtered, unable to articulate exactly why his confession made me angrier rather than flattered. "Because I'm not some damsel for you to sweep off her feet. I'm not a game or a curiosity or whatever sick thing this is for you." "I never said you were." "Then what am I?" I challenged, crossing my arms over my chest. "What exactly do you want from me?" Damien studied me for a long moment, his expression impossible to read in the growing darkness. When he finally spoke, his voice was low and absolutely certain. "I'm still figuring that out. But I promise you, Vivienne, I'm going to find out." Before I could respond, before I could tell him exactly where he could shove his promises and his curiosity, he turned and walked away, disappearing back toward the reception hall and leaving me alone in the garden with my racing heart and the taste of him still on my lips. I didn't hear from Damien Moretti for exactly 3 days. 3 days during which I convinced myself the entire encounter had been some fever dream brought on by emotional distress and too much champagne I hadn't actually drunk. 3 days of Maya texting me constantly, demanding details about the wedding I was too embarrassed to provide. 3 days of forcing myself not to Google his name, because that would mean admitting he'd gotten under my skin. On the 4th day, he showed up at the coffee shop where I worked. I was in the middle of the morning rush, steam from the espresso machine making my hair frizz despite the careful bun I'd twisted it into. My apron was already stained with milk and coffee grounds, my smile wearing thin as customer after customer ordered increasingly complicated drinks with the casual entitlement of people who'd never worked a service job in their lives. Grande half-calf soy latte with 2 pumps sugar-free vanilla and extra foam, I called out, sliding the cup across the counter to a woman who immediately frowned at it like I'd personally offended her. This doesn't look like extra foam. I can remake it if you'd like, I offered with practiced patience, even as the line behind her grew longer and more restless. Never mind. I'm already late. She grabbed the cup and left without tipping, because of course she did. I turned back to the register to take the next order and froze. Damien Moretti stood at the front of the line, looking utterly out of place in his tailored navy suit among the college students in hoodies and stressed office workers in business casual. He was studying the menu board with apparent interest, like he actually needed to consider what to order at a chain coffee shop. "Can I help you?" I asked automatically, my customer service voice masking the sudden spike in my pulse. His eyes met mine, and a slow smile curved his mouth. "Vivian, what a pleasant surprise." "It's not a surprise if you came here on purpose," I said flatly. "No?" He stepped up to the counter, leaning slightly on it in a way that brought him closer to me. "Then perhaps I should say it's pleasant to see you again. What do you want?" "Coffee." His tone suggested we were discussing something far more intimate than beverages. "What would you recommend?" I bit back the urge to recommend he leave. "Professional," I reminded myself. "Be professional. The house blend is popular, or if you want something stronger, the dark roast." "I'll take whatever you're having." "I don't drink coffee." His eyebrow rose. "You work in a coffee shop but don't drink coffee?" "The smell makes me nauseous," I admitted before I could stop myself, then immediately regretted it. That was too personal, too much information for someone who'd kissed me without permission, and then disappeared for 3 days. Something flickered in his expression. Understanding, maybe, or calculation. "Then I'll take the dark roast. Black." Of course he took it black. Of course. I rang him up, my fingers fumbling slightly on the register keys, which he definitely noticed. When I told him the total, he handed me his credit card without looking at the amount. The name embossed on it read, Damien A. Moretti, and the card itself was black metal, the kind banks only issued to people with obscene amounts of wealth. "I'll have that right out for you," I said, passing the card back to him and refusing to meet his eyes. "Vivian, your coffee will be ready at the end of the counter." I was already turning to the next customer, but his voice stopped me. "I'd like to apologize again, properly this time." The woman behind him in line made an impatient noise. I could feel everyone watching us, including my manager who was shooting me pointed looks from the back. "You already apologized," I said quietly. "And I have a line. Have dinner with me." The words hung in the air between us, drawing raised eyebrows from the nearby customers who were definitely eavesdropping. "No. Why not?" "Because I don't have dinner with men who assault me in gardens." His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. I apologized for that. Apologies don't erase actions. I was aware my voice had lost its customer service sweetness, but I couldn't help it. "You crossed a line." "I know, which is why I'm asking for a chance to make it right." "By taking me to dinner?" "That's your idea of making it right?" "It's a start." The woman behind him groaned audibly. "Can you guys have your lovers' quarrel somewhere else? Some of us have jobs to get to." Heat flooded my cheeks. I'm not. I looked at Damien, who was watching me with barely concealed amusement. "Order your coffee or move aside." He didn't move. "One dinner, that's all I'm asking." And I'm saying no. "Why?" "Because I don't know you. Because you kissed me without asking. Because you're clearly insane if you think showing up at my workplace and asking me out in front of everyone is an appropriate way to apologize. Would you have preferred I showed up at your apartment? A chill ran down my spine. You don't know where I live. His silence was answer enough. The woman behind him had given up and moved to the other register. Other customers were doing the same, shooting us annoyed glances. My manager was definitely going to write me up for this. You need to leave, I said, my voice shaking slightly. Now. Damien studied me for a long moment, then nodded. I'll wait for my coffee at the end of the counter, as instructed. He moved aside, and I turned to help the next customer with hands that trembled. Through the entire interaction, I was aware of his presence, of his eyes on me as I worked. When I finally called out his drink, he collected it without another word. But as he turned to leave, he placed something on the counter beside the register. A business card. Heavy cardstock with minimal text. Damien A. Moretti and a phone number. Nothing else. I should have thrown it away immediately. Instead, I found myself slipping it into my apron pocket before my manager could see. He came back the next day, and the day after that. Always at different times. Mid-morning one day, late afternoon the next, evening once when I was closing. Always ordering the same thing. Dark roast. Black. Always leaving a tip so generous it made my coworkers shoot me curious glances. Always looking at me like I was the most fascinating thing he'd encountered in years. He never asked me out again. Never pushed. Just ordered his coffee, made brief small talk if I allowed it, and left. It was infuriating. By the end of the week, Maya had noticed something was wrong. We were having our usual Friday night dinner at the Thai place around the corner from my apartment, and I'd barely touched my pad Thai. Okay, spill, she demanded, pointing at me with her chopsticks. You've been weird all week. Is this about the wedding? No, maybe. I don't know. That's super helpful, Viv. She studied me with narrowed eyes. Did something happen? Did Ethan say something to you? Ethan didn't even acknowledge I existed. Then what? I debated telling her, but Maya had a way of worming information out of me eventually. There was this guy at the wedding. Her eyes lit up. Oh my God, did you hook up with someone? Please tell me you hooked up with someone. You deserve a hot rebound. I didn't hook up with anyone. I pushed rice around on my plate. He kissed me. And I didn't want him to. Maya's expression immediately shifted from excited to concerned. Viv, did he force you? No, I mean yes, kind of. He kissed me without asking, but when I pushed him away and yelled at him, he stopped immediately. He apologized. Okay, so creepy, but not assault. Did you report him? Report him to who? The wedding police? Fair point. She studied me. But that's not all, is it? What else happened? I told her about Damien showing up at the coffee shop, about the business card, about the daily visits. Maya listened with increasing incredulity. Let me get this straight, she said when I finished. This mystery rich guy who kissed you at your ex's wedding is now stalking you at work? I wouldn't say stalking. Viv, he looked up where you work and has been coming in every day. That's literally the definition of stalking. He's just getting coffee. At the same place every day where you happen to work? Come on. Maya leaned forward. Have you Googled him? No. Bullshit. Show me your phone. I reluctantly handed it over, and Maya immediately opened the browser. Her fingers flew over the screen, then her eyes widened. Holy shit. What? She turned the phone around to show me a news article. Moretti Industries expands into Asian markets. The photo showed Damien in a perfectly tailored suit, shaking hands with what looked like a government official. Moretti Industries, Maya read aloud. One of the largest privately held corporations in Europe, with holdings in real estate, shipping, and private security. She scrolled down. Private security. That's code for something sketchy, right? That doesn't mean anything. There's more. She kept scrolling. Look at this. Allegations of money laundering that were dismissed. Links to organized crime that were never proven. Viv, this guy isn't just some businessman. He's like Mafia or something. My stomach dropped. That's ridiculous. The Mafia isn't real. Tell that to the 3 different investigative journalists who've written about the Moretti family. She kept reading. His father was Antonio Moretti, who died 5 years ago under suspicious circumstances. Damien took over the family business at 26. I snatched the phone back, staring at the photo of Damien. He looked the same, expensive suit, commanding presence. But now I saw it differently. The hardness around his eyes, the way he stood like violence was always an option, just not one he'd chosen yet. This is insane, I muttered. Insane is him showing up at your work every day when you've clearly told him no. Maya reached across the table to grip my hand. Viv, you need to be careful. This isn't some guy who's just really into you. This is someone who's used to getting what he wants, and who has the money and power to make that happen. He hasn't done anything threatening. Yet. Maya's expression was serious. Promise me you'll be careful. Don't go anywhere alone with him. Keep your phone charged. Tell someone if he does anything that makes you uncomfortable. I promise. But even as I said it, I couldn't stop thinking about the way Damien had looked at me in the garden, like I was a puzzle he was determined to solve. About the way his kiss had felt. Wrong and unwanted, yes, but also electric in a way that scared me. 3 days later, he showed up at my gym. I noticed him on the treadmill across the cardio section, running at an easy pace that suggested he could maintain it for hours. He wore athletic clothes that were somehow just as expensive looking as his suits, and several women were shooting him interested glances that he completely ignored. Because he was watching me. I pretended not to notice, increasing the speed on my elliptical until my heart hammered and sweat dripped down my spine. When I finally stopped and headed for the locker room, I felt his eyes follow me the entire way. He was waiting by the exit when I emerged, my gym bag slung over my shoulder, my hair still damp from the shower. This is getting ridiculous, I said before he could speak. Is it? He fell into step beside me as I walked toward the parking lot. I'm simply exercising at a gym I belong to. You belong to this gym? Since when? Since yesterday. I stopped walking, turning to face him. You joined my gym? I needed a gym in this neighborhood. This one had good reviews. I don't believe you. His mouth curved into that almost smile. Smart girl. Stop following me. I'm not following you. We just happen to keep ending up in the same places. Because you're making it happen. A couple walking past us shot us curious glances. Damien noticed and took my elbow gently, guiding me toward a quieter section of the parking lot. I should have pulled away, but his touch was surprisingly gentle, almost careful. Listen to me carefully, Vivian, he said once we were alone. I'm not trying to frighten you. I'm not trying to force you into anything, but I can't seem to stop thinking about you, and I don't know what to do about that. Try thinking about someone else. I've tried. It's not working. That sounds like a personal problem. It is. He released my elbow, running a hand through his hair in a gesture that seemed genuinely frustrated. I don't usually have to work this hard to get someone's attention. Maybe that's the problem. Maybe you're so used to getting what you want that you don't know how to handle someone saying no. Maybe. He studied me intently. Or maybe I've never wanted something, someone enough to work for it before. I'm not a thing to be obtained. I know that. His voice dropped lower. That's part of what makes you so compelling. We stood there in the parking lot, the evening air cool against my overheated skin, and I searched his face for any sign of insincerity. But all I saw was that same intensity, that focus that made me feel like the only person in the world. "One coffee," I heard myself say, surprising us both. Not dinner, not a date, just coffee in a public place during daylight hours. His expression transformed, that almost smile becoming something genuine and devastating. "When?" "Tomorrow, 2:00, the coffee shop where I work." "Your workplace? That seems like mixing business and pleasure." "It's my day off, and it's public, busy, and safe." I met his eyes steadily. "Take it or leave it." "I'll take it." I turned to walk toward my car, then paused and looked back. "And Damien? If you show up anywhere else I regularly go, my apartment building, my usual grocery store, any of it, the coffee is off and I'm filing a restraining order." He nodded slowly. "Understood." As I drove home, my hands shaking slightly on the steering wheel, I wondered what the hell I'd just agreed to. Coffee with a man who might be involved in organized crime, who'd kissed me without permission, who'd been essentially stalking me for 2 weeks. But I also remembered the way he'd apologized, the way he'd respected my space in the garden once I'd pushed him away. The fact that despite his obvious resources and power, he'd never once tried to force me into anything, just persistently, maddeningly, shown up. Maybe I was insane. Maybe this was the worst decision I'd ever made. Or maybe, just maybe, I was finally allowing myself to be selfish, to want something that wasn't safe or sensible or sweet. Tomorrow at 2:00, I would find out. Damien arrived at exactly 2 p.m. I'd gotten there 30 minutes early, securing a table by the window where I could watch the street, my phone positioned prominently on the table next to my untouched latte. Maya had insisted on knowing exactly where I'd be, what time, and had made me promise to text her every 30 minutes so she'd know I was safe. "If I don't hear from you, I'm calling the police," she'd said that morning, only half joking. "It's coffee, not a kidnapping." With a guy who's potentially in the Mafia? Same thing. Now, watching Damien walk toward the entrance, I wondered if she'd been right to worry. He wore dark jeans and a black sweater that somehow looked more expensive than most people's formal wear, his stride confident as he scanned the interior. When his eyes found mine, that small smile appeared, the one I was beginning to recognize, that suggested he found everything about this situation amusing. He ordered at the counter first, and I watched the barista, a college student named Marcus who worked weekends, practically trip over himself to serve him. Even without his usual suits, Damien commanded attention, drew eyes. It wasn't just his looks, though those were undeniable. It was something else, some quality that made people unconsciously step aside, defer to him. Power, I realized. That's what people recognized. The unmistakable aura of someone accustomed to being obeyed. "Thank you for meeting me," he said as he approached the table, his own coffee in hand. "May I?" I gestured to the chair across from me. "You paid for a month of gym membership just to see me exercise. I figured I owed you at least one conversation." He settled into the chair with that same fluid grace, studying me with open interest. "You changed your hair." My hand went self-consciously to the braid draped over my shoulder. "I always braid it on my days off." "It suits you. More relaxed than the bun you wear for work. Do you analyze everything about people, or am I just special?" "You're special." He said it like it was a simple fact, not flattery. Though I do tend to notice details, yes. It saved my life more than once. The casual mention of life-threatening situations should have alarmed me. Instead, I found myself leaning forward slightly. "Is that what you do? Your business involves danger?" "Sometimes." He took a sip of his coffee, his eyes never leaving mine. "But we're here to talk about you, not me." "Why?" "Because you're far more interesting." I laughed, the sound more bitter than I intended. I work in a coffee shop and live in a tiny apartment with a roommate. I went to community college because I couldn't afford anything else. My idea of the exciting Friday night is Thai food and bad reality TV. There's literally nothing interesting about me. You're wrong. His voice was quiet, but absolute. You walked into your ex-boyfriend's wedding wearing a dress designed to break hearts, and when he ignored you, you didn't make a scene or cry or do any of the dramatic things people do when they're hurt. You got angry instead. I cried in the garden. After I followed you and pushed you. Before that, you were furious. I saw it in your eyes during our conversation. He leaned forward, mirroring my posture. Sweet, kind Vivian. That's what Jessica called you, what everyone seems to think. But in that garden, you weren't sweet. You were fire. My pulse quickened. You don't know me well enough to make those judgments. Then let me know you better. That's what this is for, isn't it? I wrapped both hands around my latte cup, needing something to do with my nervous energy. Fine. What do you want to know? Everything. Start with why you were with Ethan in the first place. The question caught me off guard. That's a weird thing to ask on a first... I caught myself. On a first coffee. Is it? You wore a dress to his wedding specifically to make him notice you. That suggests either you're still in love with him, or you never properly dealt with why you broke up. We didn't break up. He broke up with me. The words came out more defensive than I intended. 3 months before he proposed to Caroline. And you still don't know why? I shook my head, looking down at my coffee. He said he needed to focus on his career, that he wasn't ready for the level of commitment I wanted. Then, 3 months later, he's engaged to someone else. Did you love him? I thought I did. I met Damien's eyes. But now I wonder if I just love the idea of him, of being in a stable relationship with someone who seemed to have his life figured out. Security. What? You loved the security he represented, the promise of a life that was predictable and safe. Damien's expression was unreadable. There's nothing wrong with that. Isn't there? Shouldn't love be more than just wanting stability? Most people's version of love is wanting something. Wanting to feel safe, wanting to be desired, wanting to not be alone. Pure, selfless love is rarer than people pretend. The cynicism in his voice surprised me. You sound like you don't believe in it at all. I believe in loyalty. I believe in trust. I believe in choosing someone and standing by that choice even when it's difficult. He paused. But love in the romantic sense? The kind poets write about? I think that's often just people projecting their fantasies onto someone convenient. That's incredibly depressing. Is it? Or is it honest? I studied him. This man who looked like he'd stepped out of a fashion magazine but talked like someone who'd seen too much of the world's ugliness to maintain illusions. What about your family? Surely you must have seen examples of good relationships. Something shuddered in his expression. My father loved my mother. I know that absolutely. But that love didn't protect her from the consequences of his choices. What happened? That's not first coffee conversation. But his tone suggested it might never be, that some doors remained locked even to people he let get close. I should have pushed. Should have demanded to know what Maya had found. The allegations, the suspicious death, the questions about organized crime. But something about the way he'd closed off made me hesitate. Tell me about the dress instead, he said, changing the subject with obvious intent. Your friend's idea? I nodded. Maya. She thought it would give me closure, showing up looking good and reminding Ethan what he'd lost. But it didn't work. No. He barely glanced at me all night. I tried to keep the hurt out of my voice and failed. I felt invisible, or worse, irrelevant. You were the most visible person there. To you, maybe. But I gestured vaguely at him. You. What does that mean? It means you're not normal. Normal people don't follow strangers to coffee shops and gyms. Normal people don't look at someone the way you look at me. And how do I look at you? Like I'm something to be consumed, I thought, but didn't say. Like I'm a puzzle you're trying to solve. Close. He leaned back in his chair, that almost smile returning. I look at you like you're the first genuine thing I've encountered in a very long time. And I'm trying to figure out if you're real, or if I've imagined you. The words sent heat through my chest. You can't just say things like that. Why not? It's true. Because I struggled to articulate why his brutal honesty unsettled me so much. People don't just say exactly what they're thinking. There are rules, social norms, which I'm ignoring because life is too short to waste time on games. He leaned forward again. I want you, Vivienne. I've wanted you since I saw you standing alone at that wedding, radiating hurt and fury in equal measure. I wanted you when you slapped me in the garden. I wanted you every single day I came to your work, hoping you'd finally say yes to coffee. And I want you right now, sitting across from me, looking at me like I'm insane, but also like you're not entirely opposed to my particular brand of insanity. My mouth had gone dry. I'm not asking you to be. I'm just being honest about what I want. You can decide what you want on your own timeline. And if I never want the same thing, then I'll have wasted a gym membership and consumed far too much mediocre coffee. His tone was light, but his eyes were serious. But I'll respect your choice. We sat in silence for a moment, the sounds of the coffee shop surrounding us, the hiss of the espresso machine, the murmur of conversation, acoustic music playing softly through speakers. Normal sounds in a normal place, belying the completely abnormal conversation we were having. I need to know something, I said finally. The truth. Ask. Are you in the Mafia? Damien didn't react with surprise or denial. He simply took a sip of his coffee, set down the cup, and met my eyes steadily. Define Mafia. You know what I mean. Organized crime. Illegal operations. The stuff that gets people killed. My businesses are legitimate. I pay my taxes. I employ thousands of people across multiple countries, and I ensure they're compensated fairly for their work. He paused. But I also operate in spaces that exist in gray areas. I provide services that technically legal enterprises won't touch. I have relationships with people who would be considered criminals by most definitions. And yes, violence is occasionally necessary to protect what's mine. The honesty stole my breath. You're admitting it. I'm being honest, which is what you asked for. His expression didn't change. Does that frighten you? Yes. Good. You should be frightened. My world isn't safe or kind or predictable. Then why are you pursuing me? Why drag someone like me into that? Because you're not part of that world. You're separate from it, untouched by it. When I'm with you, I'm not thinking about shipping routes or political connections or which rival family is making moves into my territory. I'm just thinking about you. His voice dropped lower. And that's something I haven't experienced in longer than I can remember. I should have run. Should have grabbed my phone and walked out and never looked back. But instead, I found myself asking, what happens if I say yes to another coffee date? Then we have another coffee date, and maybe eventually dinner, and maybe eventually more than that, if you decide you want it. And if your world follows you into mine, I won't let it. The words were a promise and a threat combined. You and whatever we might become are separate, protected, sacred, if you will. You can't guarantee that. No, he admitted. But I can promise I'll do everything in my power to keep you safe. That counts for something, doesn't it? It shouldn't have. I should have been smarter than this, more cautious. Maya would kill me if she knew I was even considering this. But there was something intoxicating about the way Damien looked at me, about being wanted with such single-minded intensity, about being seen as something precious by someone who could have literally anyone. One more coffee date, I heard myself say. But not here. Somewhere neutral. Name the place. There's a bookstore cafe across town. Quiet, small. Nobody knows me there. When? Next weekend. Saturday afternoon. He nodded slowly, a genuine smile finally breaking through his usual reserve. Saturday afternoon at a bookstore cafe. I'll find out which one. Of course you will, I muttered, but without real heat. We talked for another hour, the conversation flowing more easily once the heavy subjects were set aside. He asked about my favorite books, my opinions on terrible reality TV, why I'd chosen to braid my hair today specifically. In return, I learned he spoke 4 languages fluently, had never been to Disneyland, and had strong opinions about the correct way to make espresso. He walked me to my car afterward, keeping a respectful distance, not pushing for more physical contact. But when I unlocked the door, he caught my wrist gently. "Thank you," he said simply, "for giving me a chance I probably don't deserve." "You definitely don't deserve it," I agreed. "But apparently I'm not as smart as I thought I was. Or maybe you're smarter than you give yourself credit for. Maybe you recognize that some risks are worth taking." Before I could respond, he lifted my hand and pressed his lips to my knuckles, old-fashioned, almost courtly. Then he stepped back, releasing me. Until Saturday, Vivian. I drove home in a daze. Maya's texts coming through rapid fire the moment I was out of the parking lot. But I didn't answer them yet. I needed to process what had just happened, what I'd just agreed to. I was going on a second coffee date with a man who'd essentially admitted to being a criminal, who'd been stalking me in the most persistent, unsettling way, who looked at me like I was the only thing in the world worth paying attention to, and despite every logical reason I shouldn't, I found myself looking forward to Saturday. The bookstore cafe was everything I'd hoped it would be, tucked into a quiet neighborhood I rarely visited, with floor-to-ceiling shelves, mismatched furniture, and the comforting smell of old books and fresh coffee. Saturday afternoon sunlight streamed through tall windows, casting warm pools of light across worn hardwood floors. I'd arrived 20 minutes early again, unable to help myself, and claimed a small table in the back corner. My book, a mystery novel I'd been trying to finish for weeks, lay open in front of me, but I'd read the same paragraph 4 times without absorbing a single word. Mystery or thriller? Damien's voice startled me. He stood beside the table, 2 coffee cups in hand, looking unfairly good in jeans and a dark green sweater that brought out the warmth in his brown eyes. Mystery. How did you... You're reading the same page you were when I walked in 10 minutes ago. He set down the coffees and pulled out the chair across from me. Either it's incredibly compelling, or you're distracted. You were here 10 minutes ago? Technically 15, but I didn't want to seem too eager. That almost smile appeared. Though I suppose admitting I was watching you browse defeats the purpose. I should have been irritated by that. Instead, I found myself fighting a smile of my own. You're terrible at playing it cool, you know that? I've never needed to play it cool before. This is new territory. He slid one of the cups toward me. Herbal tea. Peppermint. I remembered you said coffee makes you nauseous. The thoughtfulness of the gesture caught me off guard. Thank you. You're welcome. He settled back in his chair, and for a moment we just looked at each other, the air between us charged with possibility and uncertainty. So, I said finally, wrapping my hands around the warm cup. Tell me something nobody else knows about you. That's a dangerous question. You wanted to get to know each other better. This is how people do that. Damien considered this, his fingers tapping a slow rhythm against his own cup. I wanted to be a teacher when I was young. History. I loved the way the past informed the present, how understanding where we came from could help predict where we might go. The admission surprised me. What happened? My father died, and I inherited responsibilities that didn't leave room for those kinds of dreams. His voice was matter of fact, but I heard the thread of regret woven through it. You can't be a history teacher when you're running an organization that operates across 4 continents. Do you ever wish things had been different? Wishing is pointless. I play the hand I was dealt and do the best I can with it. He met my eyes. Your turn. Tell me something nobody knows about you. I hesitated, then decided to match his honesty. I'm pregnant. The words hung in the air between us. Damien's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his posture, a stillness that suggested complete attention. How far along? 12 weeks, just past the first trimester. Ethan's? I nodded, shame washing over me. We were together for 2 years. I thought we had a future. I found out 3 weeks after he left me. Does he know? No. And I'm not planning to tell him. I looked down at my tea. He made it clear he didn't want commitment. I'm not going to force him into being a father just because the condom failed. That's remarkably generous considering he abandoned you. It's not generous, it's practical. I don't want my child growing up with a father who resents their existence. The words came out more bitter than I intended. I've seen what that does to kids. Damien was quiet for a long moment, his dark eyes studying me with that unnerving intensity. Is that why you're being careful with me? Because you're protecting not just yourself, but your child? That's part of it, yes. I met his gaze steadily. I don't have the luxury of being reckless anymore. Every choice I make affects another life now. Which is why you should run from me as fast as possible. Probably. And yet you're here. And yet I'm here, I echoed, not entirely sure why that was true. Damien leaned forward, his voice dropping lower. I need you to understand something, Vivian. If we do this, if you decide you want more than coffee dates with me, I'm not going to be a casual thing. I don't do casual. I don't do halfway. When I commit to something, to someone, it's absolute. My heart hammered against my ribs. That sounds intense. It is, but you should know what you're getting into before you make any decisions. What about the baby? I forced myself to ask. That doesn't scare you off? Should it? Most men would run, especially men like you who could have anyone they want. His expression softened imperceptibly. Most men are fools who don't recognize something valuable when it's right in front of them. Your child doesn't scare me. If anything, it makes you more compelling. How? Because it means you understand what it is to protect something at all costs, to put someone else's well-being above your own wants. He paused. That's a quality I respect. We talked for 3 hours after that, the afternoon fading into evening, as we covered everything from favorite childhood memories to strong opinions about terrible movie sequels. The conversation flowed easily, interrupted only by occasional trips to get more tea or browse the bookshelves together. I learned Damien had a sister who'd died when he was 19, that he'd taught himself to cook after his mother passed, that he collected first edition books but rarely had time to read them. He learned I'd wanted to be a nurse but couldn't afford the schooling, that I was terrified of heights but loved thunderstorms, that I had a secret addiction to true crime podcasts. Your turn, he said as we stood browsing the mystery section, our shoulders almost touching. Worst date you've ever been on. I laughed. There was this guy in college who took me to his grandmother's house for our first date. That doesn't sound terrible. She spent the entire evening showing me his baby pictures and asking when we were going to give her great-grandchildren on the first date. Damien's laugh was genuine, transforming his usually serious face. Fair enough. Though in his defense, that's a strategic move. Get the family approval early. Is that what you're doing? Getting approval early? I don't need anyone's approval. He pulled a book from the shelf, examining the cover. But if I were introducing you to people who mattered to me, I'd make sure they understood you were important. The casual way he said it, you were important, made my breath catch. We've known each other less than a month. Time is relative. I've known people for years who've never mattered, and I've known you a few weeks and can't seem to stop thinking about you. He replaced the book and turned to face me fully. Does that scare you? Yes. Good. It should. He reached out, tucking a loose strand of hair behind my ear in a gesture that felt impossibly intimate. Because I'm about to make it worse. How? I want to take you to dinner. A real date, not coffee in neutral territory. Somewhere nice where I can see you in another beautiful dress and spend hours learning everything else there is to know about you. Damien, before you say no, know that I'm aware of the complications. I know you're pregnant. I know you're cautious. I know my world is dangerous, and you have more than yourself to protect now. His hand remained near my face, not quite touching, but close enough that I could feel the warmth of his skin. But I also know that I'm not going to stop wanting this. Wanting you, regardless of how many logical reasons there are to walk away. This is insane. Completely. I should say no. You should. But I'm not going to, I heard myself say, surprising both of us. His smile was slow and devastating. When? Next Friday, 7 o'clock. And Damien, pick somewhere quiet. I don't do well with crowds. Noted. He lowered his hand, but his eyes remained intense. I'll send a car for you. I can drive myself. You could, but you won't have to. Before I could argue, he added, My driver is security vetted. I'm not putting you in a car with just anyone. The reminder of his world, of danger and security and the need to be cautious, should have made me reconsider. Instead, I found it strangely reassuring. Whatever else Damien was, he took protection seriously. We walked back to my car as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. He didn't try to kiss me, didn't push for more physical contact. But the way he watched me, the focus in his gaze, felt more intimate than a touch. Thank you for today, I said as I unlocked my car door. Thank you for saying yes. He held the door as I slid into the driver's seat. Drive carefully. I will. And Vivian? He leaned down slightly, bringing himself to my eye level. Thank you for telling me about the baby. That took trust, and I don't take that lightly. As I drove home, my phone buzzed with messages from Maya demanding updates. But instead of answering them, I found myself thinking about Damien's words. Time is relative. I've known people for years who've never mattered. He was right, in a way. I'd known Ethan for 2 years and never felt the kind of magnetic pull I experienced in Damien's presence. Had never felt seen the way I did when those dark eyes focused entirely on me, which was either the most romantic thing that had ever happened to me or a massive red flag I was choosing to ignore. Probably both. When I finally texted Maya back, I kept it simple. I'm in trouble. Her response came immediately. Good trouble or bad trouble. I stared at my phone, thinking about next Friday's dinner date, about the way Damien looked at me like I was something precious, about how I was letting a potentially dangerous man into my life when I was supposed to be focused on preparing for motherhood. Not sure yet, I typed back. But I don't think I can stop now. The dress Damien sent arrived Thursday afternoon. I'd come home from my morning shift at the coffee shop to find a large black box sitting outside my apartment door. Tied with silver ribbon and embossed with the name of a designer boutique I'd only ever walked past with my nose pressed to the window. A small card rested on top in thick cream cardstock, Damien's handwriting bold and precise. For tomorrow. D. Maya, who'd come over to help me pick out something appropriate for the date, let out a low whistle when I opened the box. Inside, nestled in tissue paper, was a deep emerald green dress that looked like liquid silk. Holy shit, she breathed, reaching out to touch the fabric. Viv, this is Valentino. Do you know how much this costs? I don't want to know. Several $1,000s, at least. She lifted it carefully from the box. Try it on. I'm not keeping it. I'm going to wear something from my own closet. Don't be stupid. You're going to dinner with a billionaire who sent you designer clothes. You wear the dress. It feels like, I don't know, like he's buying me or something. Maya leveled me with a look. He's courting you. There's a difference. Now try on the damn dress before I do. The dress fit perfectly, which should have been impossible since Damien had never seen me in anything but work clothes and casual outfits. But somehow he'd gotten my measurements exactly right. The silk draped over my small baby bump in a way that was flattering without being obvious, the color bringing out the green flecks in my hazel eyes. You look like a princess, Maya said softly. A really hot, slightly dangerous princess. I studied my reflection, barely recognizing myself. This is crazy, right? All of this? Completely insane. She came to stand beside me. But also kind of amazing? When's the last time a guy made this kind of effort for you? Never. Exactly. Ethan never once sent you flowers or planned a surprise or made you feel special. This guy, criminal background and stalker tendencies aside, is clearly obsessed with you. That's not necessarily a good thing. No, but it's not necessarily bad either. She squeezed my shoulder. Just be careful, okay? Keep your phone on you. Text me every hour. And for God's sake, don't go anywhere private with him until you're absolutely sure you trust him. The Blacktown car arrived at exactly 7 on Friday evening. The driver was a stocky man in his 50s with kind eyes who introduced himself as Marcus and helped me into the back seat with surprising gentleness. Mr. Moretti asked me to assure you that I've been with the family for 20 years and you're perfectly safe in my care, he said as we pulled away from the curb. The family? His father employed me first. I've known Damien since he was a boy. Marcus met my eyes in the rearview mirror. He's a good man, miss. Whatever you might have heard or fear about him, he's a good man where it counts. The drive took 40 minutes, heading toward the more exclusive part of the city where buildings were separated by gates and security rather than mere property lines. We pulled up to what looked like a private residence rather than a restaurant, a restored Victorian mansion with warm light glowing from tall windows. Damien met me at the entrance, and my breath caught. He wore a charcoal suit that was somehow both formal and casual, his dark hair perfectly styled, a small smile curving his lips as he took in my appearance. You're devastating in that dress, he said simply. Thank you for wearing it. Thank you for sending it. Though you shouldn't have. It's too much. Nothing is too much when it comes to you. He offered his arm. Shall we? The interior of the house was even more stunning. Original architectural details combined with modern luxury, artwork on the walls that looked like it belonged in museums. Damien led me through to a private dining room where a table had been set for 2, candles casting flickering light across crystal and china. You rented an entire restaurant? I own the house. The chef is someone I hired for the evening. He pulled out my chair. I remembered you said you don't do well with crowds. The thoughtfulness stole my breath. It's too much, Damien. You keep saying that, but I disagree. He sat across from me, his eyes warm in the candlelight. You deserve to be somewhere beautiful, somewhere you can relax and not worry about being watched or judged. A server appeared, a woman in her 30s who introduced herself as Marie and described the evening's menu with genuine enthusiasm. Every dish she mentioned made my mouth water, and I realized I'd been so nervous about tonight that I'd barely eaten all day. "The lady will start with the butternut squash soup," Damien said when Marie finished. "And I'll have the same. For the main course, prepare the salmon for her, not the steak. And make sure everything is cooked thoroughly. No rare meat, no raw preparations." Marie nodded and disappeared. I stared at Damien. "How did you know I can't have rare meat right now? Pregnant women should avoid undercooked foods, food safety risk." He said it so matter-of-factly, like of course he'd researched pregnancy dietary restrictions before planning the menu. I also made sure there's no soft cheese, no raw fish, nothing that could pose a risk. Something warm unfurled in my chest. "You didn't have to do that." "Of course I did." He leaned forward slightly. "Your safety and the baby's well-being are important to me." "Why?" The question burst out before I could stop it. "Why do you care so much? You barely know me. You owe me nothing. Most men would have run the moment they heard I was pregnant with someone else's child." Damien was quiet for a moment, his fingers tracing the stem of his wine glass. When he spoke, his voice was lower than usual, almost vulnerable. "When I was 19, my sister got pregnant. She wasn't married. The father wanted nothing to do with it. And my father, he was old-fashioned, traditional. He made her feel ashamed of something that should have been celebrated." He paused, pain flickering across his features. "She died during childbirth. The baby didn't make it either. And one of my last memories of her is watching her cry because she felt so alone, so abandoned." My throat tightened. "I'm so sorry." I promised myself then that if I ever met a woman in that situation, I would make sure she never felt that way, that she'd know she wasn't alone. His eyes met mine, intense and sincere. "And then I met you. Brave and beautiful, wearing a red dress to face your pain, pushing me away in a garden because you refused to be anyone's victim. You're everything my sister deserved to be and never got the chance to become." Tears pricked at my eyes. "You can't project your sister onto me." "I'm not. I see you clearly, Vivian. Probably more clearly than anyone else in your life. You're terrified and trying to hide it. You're grieving a relationship that should have been more than it was. You're facing motherhood alone and pretending you're fine with it when you're anything but." His voice gentled. "But you're also strong and stubborn, and refusing to let any of it break you. That's what draws me to you. Not some ghost of my sister, but you yourself." The soup arrived, giving me a moment to compose myself. It was delicious, perfectly seasoned, with a hint of cinnamon that complemented the sweetness of the squash. We ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes before Damien spoke again. "Tell me about your family." I hesitated, then decided honesty was the only fair response to his vulnerability. "My mom died when I was 15. Cancer. My dad. He tried his best, but he didn't really know how to be a single parent. We grew apart. I swirled my spoon through the soup. He remarried 2 years ago. Nice woman. They're happy. But there's always been this distance between us since Mom died, like we're strangers who used to know each other." "So you're alone too." "I have Maya and other friends sort of, but family?" I shook my head. "No, it's just me now. And soon the baby, not just you." The certainty in his voice made me look up. "Not anymore." "Damien, you can't just... We've known each other a few weeks. You can't commit to someone you barely know." "Watch me." He set down his spoon, giving me his full attention. "I told you before, I don't do things halfway. If I'm in this with you, I'm all in. That includes the baby. That includes figuring out how to blend my world with yours, without destroying what makes you who you are. Your world, I repeated, thinking about the research Maya had done, about the allegations and questions. We should probably talk about that. What do you want to know? Everything. I deserve to know what I might be walking into. Damien nodded slowly, as if he'd been expecting this. My father built an empire that straddles the line between legitimate business and organized crime. Import-export on paper, but with connections and operations that extend into gray areas most people prefer not to think about. He held my gaze steadily. When he died, I inherited that empire. I've spent the past 5 years trying to legitimize as much as possible, moving money into legal ventures, cutting ties with the most dangerous associates, building a front that can withstand scrutiny. But some connections can't be severed. Some deals were made that I'm still honoring. And some enemies my father made are now my enemies too, whether I want them or not. Are you in danger? Always. He said it so simply, like commenting on the weather. But I'm careful. I have good security, and I don't take unnecessary risks. Except with me. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Except with you. Though I don't consider you a risk. More like an opportunity. For what? For something normal. Something real. Something that isn't about power or money, or maintaining the empire. His voice dropped lower. You make me want to be better, Vivian. To deserve the way you look at me. The main course arrived. Perfectly prepared salmon for me, steak for him. We ate and talked about lighter things, books we'd both read, places we wanted to travel, whether pineapple belonged on pizza. I said yes. He said absolutely not. We agreed to disagree. But underneath the surface conversation, I felt the weight of everything unsaid. The danger he lived with. The impossibility of what we were attempting. The fact that in a few months, I'd be a mother, and involving myself with someone like him meant potentially exposing my child to risks I couldn't fully comprehend. You're overthinking, Damien observed as dessert was served, a chocolate torte that looked almost too pretty to eat. How do you know? You get this little crease between your eyebrows when you're worried about something. He reached across the table, his finger gently smoothing the spot he'd mentioned. The touch was brief, but electric. Talk to me. I don't know if I can do this, I admitted quietly. Not because I don't want to, but because I don't know if it's fair. To the baby, I mean. Bringing them into a situation that might be dangerous. Would it help if I told you that I'd die before I let anything happen to either of you? That's not reassuring. That's you admitting there might be something to happen. He sat back, considering this. You're right. I can't promise you safety, not absolutely. But I can promise you that if you choose to be with me, you'll have resources and protection you've never had before. You'll never have to worry about rent or medical bills or any of the practical concerns that keep you up at night. Your child will have the best of everything. Education, opportunities, security. That sounds like you're trying to buy me. I'm trying to give you options. There's a difference. His expression was serious. I know what it's like to struggle, Vivian. My father came from nothing. He built everything we have from scratch, and it cost him pieces of his soul along the way. I don't want that for you. I don't want you working yourself to exhaustion at a coffee shop, worrying about how you'll afford diapers and daycare. But in exchange, I'd be tying myself to someone whose father was probably a mob boss and who admits he operates in gray areas I don't fully understand. Yes. He didn't try to sugarcoat it. That's the trade. Comfort and security in exchange for accepting that my world has darkness in it. I pushed the chocolate torte around my plate, appetite gone. I need time to think about this. Take all the time you need. But know this. My offer doesn't come with an expiration date. Whether you decide tomorrow or 3 months from now, or after the baby is born, my answer will be the same. I want you in my life, Vivian, however that looks, whatever shape it takes. We finished dessert in silence, the weight of the conversation settling between us. When Marie cleared the plates and asked if we wanted coffee, I shook my head. I was suddenly exhausted, emotionally wrung out from the intensity of the evening. I should get home, I said quietly. Damien nodded, standing and offering his hand to help me up. Marcus will drive you. Thank you for dinner. It was beautiful. Thank you for coming. He walked me to the entrance where Marcus was already waiting with the car. But before I could step outside, Damien caught my hand, his thumb brushing over my knuckles. Vivian, whatever you decide, know that tonight mattered to me. You matter to me. I looked up at him, at this powerful, dangerous man who looked at me like I was something precious, and felt something shift in my chest. Fear, yes, but also hope. And maybe, just maybe, the beginning of something that could be called love. You matter to me too, I admitted. That's what scares me. Good. He lifted my hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to my palm. Fear means it's real. On the drive home, I stared out the window at the passing city lights and tried to organize my thoughts. Everything logical said I should end this now. Damien himself had said his world was dangerous. I had a baby to think about, a future to protect. But I also thought about the way he'd researched pregnancy dietary restrictions, about the dress that fit perfectly, about the vulnerability in his eyes when he'd talked about his sister, about the way he made me feel seen and valued and important for the first time in longer than I could remember. Maybe some risks were worth taking. Maybe some people were worth the danger they brought with them. Or maybe I was just a fool falling for the wrong man at exactly the wrong time. I'd have months to figure out which one was true. The text came 3 weeks later, at 2:17 in the morning. I jolted awake, my hand instinctively going to my growing belly, a habit I'd developed as the pregnancy became more obvious. My phone screen glowed in the darkness, Damien's name appearing with a message that made my blood run cold. Someone knows about you. Pack a bag. I'm sending Marcus. I was still staring at the text when my apartment buzzer sounded, insistent and urgent. Through the peephole, I saw Marcus's familiar form, his usually calm face tight with tension. Miss Vivian, we need to go, now. What's happening? I'll explain in the car, please. Mr. Moretti was very clear about the timeline. Something in his voice made me move. I grabbed my purse, threw on the jacket hanging by the door, and followed him into the hallway. Maya's apartment was dark. She was visiting her parents this weekend, which now seemed like a blessing. The drive to Damien's house took 20 minutes that felt like hours. Marcus explained in terse sentences. A rival family had discovered I existed, had connected me to Damien, saw me as leverage. There had been surveillance, questions asked in places I frequented. Damien had people watching the watchers, which was how he'd learned about it before anything happened. How bad is it? I asked, my hand still pressed protectively over my stomach. Bad enough that Mr. Moretti is considering options he swore he'd never use again. Marcus met my eyes in the rearview mirror. He cares about you very much, Miss Vivian. I've known him since he was a boy, and I've never seen him like this. Damien was waiting when we arrived, the door opening before Marcus could even park. He pulled me from the car with barely controlled urgency, his hands framing my face as he searched my expression. Are you all right? Did anyone follow you? Did you notice anything unusual in the past few days? I'm fine. I didn't notice anything. Damien, what's going on? He guided me inside, not releasing his grip on my hand. The house was different than I remembered from our dinner. The warm lighting replaced by harsh brightness, Several men I didn't recognize positioned at strategic points, all of them armed. The Kozlov family, Damien said without preamble. Russians I've been having territory disputes with for the past year. Someone in their organization identified you leaving my house after our dinner. They've been watching you since then. Fear spiked through me. Watching me how? Photos, video surveillance. They know where you live, where you work, your daily routine. His jaw was tight with barely contained rage. They know about the baby. Oh God, they won't touch you. The words were spoken like a vow. I've already set things in motion. But you can't go back to your apartment. You can't go back to your job. You need to disappear until this is resolved. Disappear where? For how long? I have a property upstate, remote, secure, fully staffed with people I trust. You'd be safe there. For how long? I repeated, pulling my hand from his. Days? Weeks? Months? I can't just vanish from my life, Damien. I have responsibilities, bills to pay, friends who will worry. I'll handle all of it. Your rent, your expenses, explanations to anyone who matters. But your safety is non-negotiable, Vivian. Yours and the baby's. I pressed both hands to my stomach, feeling the slight swell that had become noticeable in the past week. 22 weeks pregnant, more than halfway there, and now I was being told I needed to go into hiding because of a man I'd known for less than 2 months. This is what you meant about danger, I said quietly. This is your world, following me into mine. Guilt flickered across his features. Yes. And if I'd never gone to that wedding, never worn that dress, never met you, you'd be safe and ordinary and struggling to make rent while preparing to be a single mother. His voice was rough. But you did meet me. And I'm not going to apologize for that, because I'm selfish enough to be glad you're in my life even if it's complicated everything. Complicated is an understatement. I know. He moved closer, his hand rising to rest gently over mine on my stomach, but I meant what I said. I'll die before I let anything happen to either of you. Stop saying that. Tears burned behind my eyes. Stop talking about dying like it's inevitable. It might be. Not from the Kozlovs. I'll handle them. But my life has always been borrowed time, Vivian. I've known that since I was 19, and watched my father's enemies list grow longer than his friend list. Every day I wake up is a gift, and I'm not going to waste it pretending I'm in a safe profession. One of the armed men approached, murmuring something in Italian too low for me to catch. Damien's expression hardened, and he nodded once. "The car's ready," he said to me. "We need to leave now. I haven't agreed to go. You will, because you're smart enough to know that stubbornness isn't worth your child's life." He was right, and I hated it. I hated that he was right. Hated that my choice was between hiding in some secure location or potentially putting my baby at risk. Hated that falling for him had brought me here. Fine, but I'm calling Maya to tell her. Absolutely not. Damien cut me off. The fewer people who know where you are, the safer you'll be. That includes your best friend. She'll be worried sick. I'll have someone reach out to her. A mutual friend who'll explain you had to leave town for family reasons. She'll be fine. Vivian, you need to trust me. Trust. That was the crux of it all, wasn't it? I was being asked to trust this man with my life, with my unborn child's life, when I'd known him for such a short time. To trust that his protection was worth the danger it brought. To trust that whatever he did to handle the Kozlovs wouldn't make me complicit in violence I'd spent my life avoiding. But what choice did I have? I couldn't go back to my apartment, couldn't resume my normal life with the knowledge that dangerous men were watching, waiting for an opportunity to use me as leverage. The baby inside me deserved better than a mother too stubborn to accept help when it was offered. "Okay," I said finally. I'll go. But Damien, I need a promise from you. Anything. Whatever you do to these people, I don't want to know about it. I don't want details. I just want it handled. Something complicated passed across his face. Respect, maybe, or regret. You have my word. The safe house was exactly what he'd described. Remote, secure, and beautiful in a way that felt almost surreal. 3 hours north of the city, nestled in forest that seemed to stretch endlessly in all directions. The house itself was modern but warm, with floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked a private lake. A woman named Elena was waiting when we arrived, her smile kind as she showed me to a bedroom that was larger than my entire apartment. Anything you need, you just ask, she said. Mr. Moretti has made sure we have everything. And he had. The closet held clothes in my size, including maternity wear I hadn't even thought about needing yet. The bathroom was stocked with pregnancy-safe skincare products. The bookshelves held titles I'd mentioned loving. Even the kitchen was prepared with foods I'd told him I'd been craving. You thought of everything, I said when we were alone again. Damien's security team positioned strategically around the property but giving us privacy. I try. He moved to the window, looking out at the darkening forest. I'm sorry it came to this. Are you? Because you got what you wanted. Me isolated and dependent on you. He turned, hurt flashing across his features. You think this is what I wanted? Isn't it? This whole time you've been trying to get me into your world, to make me need you. Now here I am, exactly where you wanted me. What I wanted was for you to choose me freely, not because circumstances forced your hand. His voice was low, controlled. I wanted you to decide you could love a man like me, despite his flaws. Not be trapped into accepting my protection because the alternative was danger. The word love hung in the air between us. We'd danced around it for weeks, implied it without saying it, but hearing it spoken directly made it real. I can't love you right now, I said, my voice breaking. I'm too angry and scared and overwhelmed. But I think I was falling. Before tonight made it complicated. Something vulnerable appeared in his expression. And now I need you to leave. Give me space to process all of this, to figure out how I feel about everything. He nodded slowly, though I could see the resistance in the tension of his shoulders. I'll come back tomorrow, or whenever you're ready to talk. But Vivian... He moved closer, stopping just short of touching me. I need you to know something. This situation, the danger, it won't last forever. I will handle it. And when I do, when you're safe again, you'll have a choice. Stay with me or go back to your life. Whatever you decide, I'll respect it. Will you? Because from where I'm standing, it seems like you make a lot of decisions for me, only when your safety is at stake. Beyond that? He finally allowed himself to touch me, his hand cupping my cheek gently. I want your choices to be yours, Vivian, even if they break my heart. He left then, and I was alone in the beautiful prison he'd created for my protection. Through the windows, I watched his car disappear down the winding driveway, taking with it the complicated tangle of emotions his presence always brought. Elena knocked softly on the door. Can I bring you anything? Tea? Food? Just... I stopped, my hand going to my stomach as I felt a flutter. Then another. Stronger this time. Unmistakable. The baby was moving. I sank onto the bed, tears finally spilling over as I felt life moving inside me. My child, growing and developing, blissfully unaware of the complicated world they were about to be born into. A child whose father didn't even know they existed, and whose mother was falling for a dangerous man who might get them all killed. I'm sorry, I whispered to my belly. I'm so sorry you got me for a mother. I'm supposed to make better choices than this. The flutter came again, as if in response. And despite everything, the fear, the anger, the overwhelming uncertainty, I felt a fierce protective love surge through me. Whatever else happened, whatever I decided about Damien, this baby would be safe, would be loved, would grow up knowing their worth had nothing to do with the circumstances of their conception or the danger that surrounded their birth. That promise, at least, I could keep. 3 days passed in the safe house. Damien called twice a day, respectful of my request for space but clearly struggling with the distance. Elena kept me company, never prying but always available. I read, walked the property with security following at a discreet distance, and tried to sort through the impossible tangle of my feelings. On the 4th day, Damien showed up unannounced. I was on the dock, my feet dangling in the cool lake water, when I heard footsteps approaching. I didn't turn around, just knew it was him. "You're supposed to call first," I said. "I know. But something happened I needed to tell you in person." He sat beside me, close but not touching. "The Kozlovs. They're no longer a threat." "Meaning?" "Meaning I've come to an agreement with their leadership. You're off limits, permanently. They've agreed to forget you exist in exchange for territorial concessions I was willing to make." I turned to look at him. "You gave up territory? That can't be good for business. Business isn't worth your life." He met my eyes steadily. "Or your peace of mind. I meant what I said, Vivian. You matter more." "What did you have to do? To make them agree?" "Nothing you need to worry about. But nothing that violates the promise I made you either. I didn't lie when I said you wouldn't have details. I studied his face, looking for signs of violence or guilt. But all I saw was exhaustion and something that looked like relief." "So I can go home now?" "If that's what you want. Your apartment is still there, untouched. Your job is still available. I made sure of it. You can resume your life exactly as it was before that wedding." "Can I?" I asked quietly. "Because I'm not sure I can pretend the past 2 months didn't happen, that you didn't happen." Hope flickered in his expression. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying..." I took a deep breath. "I'm saying I don't want to go back. Not to the apartment, not to the coffee shop, not to struggling alone. But I also don't want to be trapped or controlled or feel like I'm losing myself in your world. What do you want?" "I want partnership. I want to be part of decisions that affect me. I want to know I can leave if things become too much. But also know you'll fight to make me want to stay." I placed my hand over his on the dock. "I want to try this, Damien. Really try. But on terms that respect both our needs." His hand turned over, fingers interlacing with mine. "I can do that. I can give you partnership. Even when it means compromising? Especially then. Because you're worth more than my pride or my need for control." I leaned against his shoulder, feeling the solid warmth of him, and thought about the baby growing inside me. About the life I'd imagined versus the life that seemed to be unfolding. About fear and hope, and the strange way love sometimes arrived at the worst possible time. "My baby is going to need a father figure," I said quietly. "Not necessarily Ethan. Just someone who'll show up and be present and make them feel valued." Damien's arm came around me, protective and gentle. "I can be that, if you'll let me." "You'd really do that? Raise another man's child?" "I'd be raising your child. That's all that matters." He pressed a kiss to my temple. "Besides, I've gotten rather attached to the idea of you and me and this baby as a unit, whatever form that family takes." We sat there as the sun set, painting the lake in shades of orange and gold, and I felt something shift inside me. Not quite peace. There was still too much uncertainty for that. But maybe the beginning of it. The possibility that this impossible thing we were attempting might actually work. "Take me home," I said finally. "Not to the apartment. Home to wherever you are. Because I think that's where I belong now." Damien's smile was the most genuine I'd seen from him, transforming his usually guarded face. "Are you sure?" "No. But I'm sure I want to try." 6 months later, I gave birth to a daughter. Charlotte Marie, named after both our mothers. Damien was there for every moment, never leaving my side even when labor stretched for 14 hours. And when they finally placed her in my arms, tiny and perfect and screaming with healthy lungs, I looked up to find tears streaming down his face. "She's beautiful," he whispered. "You're both beautiful." "Welcome to fatherhood," I said softly. "Is that what this is?" I thought about Ethan, who'd never even known I was pregnant. About the family I'd imagined versus the one I'd found. About how love sometimes arrived in the most unexpected packages. "Yeah," I said, reaching for his hand and placing it over Charlotte's tiny fingers. "That's exactly what this is." 3 years later, I wore a different dress to a different wedding. My own. Small ceremony, just family and close friends, in the garden where Damien had kissed me that first night. Charlotte was flower girl, taking her job very seriously as she scattered petals with concentrated determination. "You know," I said to Damien as we danced at the reception, "if someone had told me that night at Ethan's wedding that I'd end up here, I would have called them insane." "What changed?" I looked up at him, at this man who'd pursued me relentlessly, protected me fiercely, and loved me, and my daughter, without reservation. I stopped being afraid of what could go wrong, and started focusing on what was going right. And what's the verdict? I smiled, thinking about Charlotte asleep in Maya's arms at a nearby table, about the life we'd built together, complicated and imperfect, but undeniably ours. About how the worst night of my life had somehow led to the best. Verdict is, sometimes the best things happen when you wear the wrong dress to the wrong wedding and catch the right person's attention. Damien's laugh was warm against my ear. "Remind me to send Ethan a thank you card." "Don't you dare." "Too late. Already did." At my shocked expression, he grinned. I thanked him for being stupid enough to let you go. Seemed like the decent thing to do. I should have been mortified. Instead, I found myself laughing, really laughing, the kind that came from deep in the chest and left you breathless. Because that was the thing about Damien. He made me brave enough to find humor in the pain, to see possibilities where I'd only seen endings. "I love you," I said when I could breathe again. "Even when you're absolutely ridiculous. I love you too." He pulled me closer, swaying to music that had shifted to something slower, more intimate. "And our daughter, and this life we've built, even when it's complicated, especially when it's complicated," I corrected. Because complicated was honest, complicated was real, and after years of trying to make simple work when it clearly didn't, complicated felt exactly right.